He spent his last days in a quiet room far away from the bright, relentless pulse of Hollywood. A soft afternoon light filtered through the blinds, landing on the edge of a leather-bound notebook lying open beside him. Ray Liotta, once the fierce, unforgettable face of American cinema, sat completely still, his breathing slower than it had ever been. And in that stillness, he whispered a confession, one he had carried for decades, one that would shake everyone who ever believed they truly knew him. The world saw a man made of steel, the intensity, the voice, the stare that could silence a room. But in his final days, Ray wasn't thinking about fame, or awards, or the roles that defined him. He was thinking about a single choice he made long ago, one he wished he could change, a decision that followed him like a shadow until the very end. What he revealed in those last moments was not a scandal, not a headline, but a truth so personal that even Hollywood, a place built on secrets, was stunned into silence. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe. These are the stories that remind us how fragile, human, and fleeting our brightest stars truly are. He was born in 1954 in Newark, New Jersey, long before the cameras, long before destiny called. But to understand the confession he shared at the end, we must return to where the first cracks in his heart began. To understand the weight behind Ray Liotta's final confession, we have to return to the very beginning, back to a boy who never truly understood where he belonged. Raymond Allen Liotta was adopted when he was just 6 months old, taken in by Mary and Alfred Liotta, a couple from New Jersey who wanted nothing more than to give a child a home. But even in his earliest memories, Ray described a strange emptiness, a quiet question that lived beneath every smile he forced for family photographs. Why was I given away? That question would follow him for the rest of his life. He grew up in a modest house, the kind where winters felt colder because the heater struggled, and summers felt quieter because everyone was too tired to talk. His father worked long hours running an auto parts store. His mother juggled several jobs. Ray remembered the distant hum of traffic at night, the faint glow of a street lamp slipping through his window, the shadows on the ceiling stretching like long fingers whenever he couldn't sleep. I always felt different, he once admitted, like I wasn't supposed to be there. School didn't help. He wasn't the loud kid, nor the popular one. He floated between groups, never fully settling, always watching from a slight distance. Teachers saw talent, but Ray didn't see himself at all. What he did feel, deeply, was anger, a kind of restless fire that he couldn't name. It made him run, shout, push himself harder than other boys. It also made him lonely. Yet inside that loneliness lived something else, a hunger, a drive to prove he was meant for something bigger than the questions he couldn't answer. That hunger would lead him to the stage for the first time, and the moment he felt the lights hit his face, a new truth awakened. But he had no idea that the same hunger would one day cost him more than he ever imagined. When Ray Liotta stepped onto a stage for the very first time, it wasn't ambition he felt, it was escape. Under the warm lights of his college theater, he realized something he had never felt at home or school, a sense of place, a sense of identity. The boy who once questioned why he existed suddenly understood that, at least for a few hours, he could become someone else entirely, and the world would listen. After graduating from the University of Miami, Ray headed to New York with nothing but a suitcase, a cracked wallet, and a hunger so sharp it bordered on desperation. He waited tables, slept little, auditioned endlessly. Casting directors described him as too intense, too sharp, too real. But those same qualities would soon become the very essence of his legend. His first break came with the soap opera Another World, a steady job that kept him afloat. But Hollywood didn't truly meet Ray Liotta until Something Wild, a role that exploded off the screen with raw energy. Suddenly, the man who once lingered on the sidelines of life was impossible to ignore. Then came Goodfellas. It wasn't just a performance, it was a storm. Ray's portrayal of Henry Hill became iconic overnight, a perfect fusion of charm, danger, and vulnerability. The world saw a star, but Ray felt something different. With every success, the pressure grew. The spotlight was bright, but it cast deep shadows. Long nights, emotional exhaustion, and a growing fear that he would never be enough, never work hard enough, never prove enough, never outrun the emptiness he carried since childhood. People cheered his rise, critics praised his craft. Hollywood embraced him as one of its defining faces. But Ray knew a truth they didn't. After the applause faded, after the cameras stopped rolling, he often sat alone in his trailer, staring at the walls, wondering why the success felt so strangely hollow. And he had no idea. The darkest chapter was still waiting. Success had carried Ray Liotta higher than he ever dreamed, but it also carved deep, silent wounds. Wounds he hid behind the sharp jawline, the intense gaze, and the relentless professionalism that Hollywood admired. As the years passed, the roles kept coming, but the pressure became heavier, more suffocating. Ray was a man who demanded perfection from himself, and perfection rarely grants mercy. There were nights when he would return home long after midnight, drop his keys on the counter, sit at the edge of his bed, and feel the weight of exhaustion like a stone on his chest. Acting no longer felt like escape. It felt like a battlefield. Every scene demanded a piece of him. Every character took something he could not get back. Then came the health struggles. Subtle at first, easy to dismiss. A shortness of breath, unusual fatigue, a pain he thought would fade with rest. But it didn't. Doctors spoke in cautious tones, with careful words that lingered heavily in the air. Ray kept most of it private, telling only a few close friends. He didn't want pity, he didn't want headlines. He wanted to keep working, keep moving, as if momentum alone could outrun the inevitable. But the cracks widened after his mother passed away, a loss that hit him far harder than he admitted. Her absence reopened every childhood question he tried to bury, every unresolved emotion he drowned in work. Ray described that period as years of silence, a time when he drifted through life with a strange numbness, smiling for cameras while feeling nothing at all. He threw himself into roles with even greater intensity, as if the characters could hold him together. But when the cameras stopped, when the makeup was wiped away, he often found himself staring at his reflection, asking the same question he had asked as a boy. Why do I feel so unfinished? Friends noticed the change. They saw the tremors in his hands, the slight slowness in his movements, the fatigue behind his eyes. Yet Ray always brushed it off with a half smile and a quick joke. But deep down, he knew. Something inside him was fading. And soon the final weeks of his life would begin, weeks in which the truth he had buried for decades would finally surface. A few weeks before his passing, Ray Liotta arrived in the Dominican Republic to film what would become his final project. The air was warm, the evenings quiet, and the hotel where he stayed overlooked a garden lined with lanterns that flickered softly after sunset. It was the kind of place where the world slowed down, where a man could hear his own heartbeat, his own regrets, his own unspoken truths. Those who worked with him during those days described him as gentle, reflective, almost unusually still. He spent long moments sitting on the balcony, watching the breeze move through the trees. Sometimes he held a cup of coffee without drinking it, just feeling the warmth in his hands. Other times he would thumb through the pages of an old notebook, pausing on certain lines as if they carried the weight of a lifetime. On one of those evenings, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the garden filled with the sound of distant cicadas, Ray shared a confession with someone close to him, one he had kept hidden for decades. His voice was soft, almost trembling. I spent so much of my life trying to prove I deserved to be here, he said, but I never told the people I loved how scared I really was, how much I needed them. He paused, looking out at the darkening sky. The biggest regret of my life, he continued, is that I never reached out to my birth mother sooner. I found her decades too late, and I never told her everything I wanted to say. It was a truth that had lived in the deepest corner of his heart, a truth shaped by a lifetime of questions about identity, belonging, and the lingering ache of origins never fully understood. He spoke of wanting more time, more moments with his daughter, more simple days free from cameras, more chances to let the people he cherished know how much they meant to him. I spent years running, he whispered. Now I wish I had stopped sooner and just been present. In the final nights, he slept lightly, waking often, gazing at the quiet garden as if searching for something only he could see. There was no anger, no fear, only a profound, fragile acceptance. And when the end finally came in that peaceful room, Ray Liotta left the world not as a Hollywood icon, but as a man who had finally confronted the truth he carried all his life, a truth he could no longer outrun. When the light faded, the world didn't just lose a legend. It lost a man who had only just begun to understand himself. After Ray Liotta's passing, the news swept through Hollywood like a sudden stillness, a silence so deep that directors, actors, and fans around the world paused to remember the man behind the unforgettable roles. Tributes flooded social media. Former co-stars shared stories of his dedication, his humor, his intensity. Yet the most poignant memories were the quiet ones. Moments between takes, late-night conversations, the gentle way he encouraged younger actors who doubted themselves. His funeral was small and private, just as he would have wanted. A handful of family members, close friends, and those who had known him beyond the screen gathered to say goodbye. Some placed flowers, others placed photographs from sets long gone. His daughter stood silently, holding a letter she had written for him, a letter she later said contained all the things I wish I told him more often. Ray left behind an estate estimated in the tens of millions, much of it willed to his daughter, with portions dedicated to educational causes he quietly supported. But his true legacy was not money. It lived in the countless performances that defined entire eras of cinema. Films that are still studied in acting schools, scenes replayed in classes where students try to understand how a man could bring such realism to the screen. Even now, people still watch Goodfellas, Field of Dreams, in his later works, finding new layers in his performances: pain, longing, vulnerability. In small bars in New Jersey, his hometown, his films still flicker on old TV screens late at night, reminding patrons of the boy who once wondered where he belonged. In the end, Ray Liotta left us with a question as raw as his final confession. What do we carry with us when the spotlight fades? And who will remember the words we couldn't say in time? If you believe that cinema can outlive a lifetime, leave a thought for Ray Liotta below.